Hey, what is up? This is the Leafs Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario, oakridgeford.com. I'm Norm, along with Mike. It feels like 2 weeks since the Leafs were dispatched by Les Habitants, and the autopsy continues, not just for us fans, but certainly for those at 40 Bay or wherever the Maple Leafs are headquarters these days. The autopsy, one that is extremely important in dissecting the carcass of this team. And I hate to be, very colorful and stark in my comments, but it's the truth. Mr. Augello, we'll just keep picking at this thing for the days, weeks, and months to come, because that's really all we can do.
Good morning, Norm. You can call us like Quincy if you want to use that old reference.
NCMD.
Or Ducky from NCIS, the guys who do the autopsy and look and find the clues that lead you to the conclusion. And starting with, because it's current here, starting with the final four of the NHL right now, the semifinals that start tonight between I think Tampa Bay and the Islanders are tonight, and Vegas, Montreal's tomorrow.
Yep.
If you look at the commonality of those four teams, all of them have strong goaltending. Varlamov, Price, Fleury, and let's see, who am I drawing? Vasilevsky's the best of them all. All of them have big, talented defenses. Tampa Bay's the high end with Hedman and McDonough and Sergachev. But they're deep. Their third pairing is Savard and Sergachev, so they're really deep. The Islanders are like a shutdown defense. You've got the big four in Montreal, and then you've got Vegas with Pietrangelo and Theodore. So all of them have deep defenses. All of them have really good goaltending, and the offense. I mean, Tampa Bay I think is on par with the Leafs, but Vegas and Montreal and the Islanders are not. And if you look at those four teams and you match them up to what Toronto is right now, they're heavy on, protecting their own end, protecting their goal, having the all-star goaltender, spending money on a goaltender. And normally that's not the big thing, and sometimes that's a detriment in terms of cap management. But in this instance, you've got a $10.5 million goaltender in Carey Price and Fleury making $7 million, and Varlamov making $5 million, and Vasilevsky making I think $9.5 million. And the Leafs are the opposite end of the spectrum. They're front loaded with forwards. They spend half their money on forwards. Mm-hmm. Their defense, they're spending money on defense, and their defense has improved over the last few years. The goaltending is a question mark. I mean, Campbell had a pretty good year, but we don't know whether he's a legitimate top starter. So if you look at the structure of the Leafs and you look at the structure of the teams that had success that are in the Final Four, it's a complete opposite. And that's where I don't know whether it's the Leafs are capable of making this kind of deep run unless they adjust their vision to match closer to what these teams are. And that's the philosophical change that I think Shanahan and Dubis really have to make, or they're not going to be here after next year if they don't have success.
This is the Leafs Combo. Norm, along with Mike, OGs, Converts, thank you very much for being in the chat, all three of you. We appreciate your support. Make sure to hit the subscribe button. If you're enjoying this product on YouTube, there's a little bell icon. You can be kept up to date on all of the goings on with the convo. And if you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, like many of you are keen to do and continue to do, thank you very much for that as well. There's just the thing right now is we're decompressing from the disappointment, right? Mm. So on one hand, you want to live your life, work, and get excited that the restrictions are easing in your neck of the woods, having plans for the summer. Yet there's still that feeling of the disappointment, the
unfulfilled,
the unfulfilled
yeah,
aspect of your fandom, that want for some sort of revenge change, some kind of a flipping of the switch. And we know that it doesn't happen that way. Mike, you talked about a philosophical change that would have to be spearheaded from the top, because the ones who can enact the change and shift directions if that's indeed what they want to do. And I'm apologies for being long-winded here. I just don't see that happening with Shanahan and Dubis. These guys have been pretty consistent and steadfast in moving forward with the ideology that Kyle Dubis, kind of, made front and center after Lou Lamoriello went to the Islanders, a team that's still playing. I just don't see them making the shift. And my feeling is that these guys are going to continue to go down the road that they're leading the team until the board says, guys, it's over. I just don't see a philosophical change. They've made the alterations last year to bring in some heavier guys, some grit, some veteran presence. I don't even know if Kyle Dubis felt like that's what he really wanted to do, but I think we're either in for some more disappointment or a major revelation that in the end, these guys and their way of wanting to play hockey will prevail. I think it's going to be more of the former than the latter.
Well, I mean, yes, I think there's a bit of stubbornness and belief on the part of Shanahan and Dubis and their vision, and that's what they reflected in the season-ending media availability. But the thing is, and if they're proven right, they're proven right. I just the model that remember, there are two things at work here. The model that they're following, I think, is the model of the '90s Detroit Red Wings, which, Larry Brooks made the point last week. The Red Wings didn't have success in the postseason until they added a power forward like Shanahan in the mid '90s. Then they won 2 cups against Philadelphia and Carolina. But until then, they had the same lack of finish that the Leafs had in the playoffs. They lost to the Leafs in '93. I think San Jose in '94. They got to the Cup final and got schooled by the Devils. So they didn't have success in the playoffs either until they added that top 6 power forward component. But the difference between that team and now is there was no cap then. They could have guys like Luc Robitaille and Brett Hull on the 4th line, or or Darren McCarty. I mean, they had no restrictions. The Leafs are in a cap world, and it's great to have all that skill if you can balance it out with size and with toughness and with defensive ability. The problem is that you can't do that when you're spending $40 million on 4 players. You have to balance things out. And if you look at, Tampa Bay did very creative cap circumvention this year with, Kucherov needed surgery. He was going to be out the entire year. And then you get one of the best 3 or 4 players in the league coming back completely fresh for the first round of the playoffs. The Leafs did similar things. I mean, how do you think that they got, Nick Foligno? They traded him through a team to save half the salary, or Riley Nash and LTIR. I mean, that kind of stuff, I give Dubis and the organization a ton of credit. They can find ways to massage the cap to be able to get players here. The problem is that now you've reached a crossroads where if you don't move a Nylander or a Marner, and I think Nylander more than Marner because Nylander is more movable and you get more back because the salary is more reasonable. If you don't do that, you're probably losing Zach Hyman. Even if you give up Alex Kerfoot in expansion or you trade him, I don't know if the money, there's enough money with Anderson going and with Kerfoot going to re-sign Hyman, or to re-sign Hyman to a contract that makes sense. If he gets an offer of $6 million out there, I don't know if it makes sense for the Leafs to sign him, because 2 or 3 years down the road, when he starts to slow down and he's scoring 8 or 9 goals, then it doesn't make sense. But if he's making 4, 4.5, he can be a defensive forward and it doesn't kill you. So these are the things that I think Shanahan and Dubis really have to address. And if they are hard-headed about it, if they decide, okay, no, we're going to stick with our guns, we love these guys, we think we can win with these guys, and they don't win again, then they're dead meat.
I think that's the plan. I really do. I think that's the plan. Stick with the core, do some augmentation. Jack Campbell is the guy, and I think that's what's going to happen. I think that's the way they're going to play it out. Because again, for Kyle Dubis, remember, he's a young man who's got lots of talent and has his own way of viewing the game. And again, a lot of his minions and his followers believe that the Leafs are going to play a style of game that will eventually overcome the rest of the league. It hasn't happened yet, and in all likelihood will never happen. But this idea, that this impression that if the Leafs just keep playing a soft, skilled kind of game, the rest of the league will just bow and awe. Hasn't happened, clearly. But remember, too, that Kyle Dubis won't be an employee of the Maple Leafs for his entire managerial career. And Kyle Dubis, this is a guy he's got his own philosophy and his own way of doing things that will transport from one organization to the next. So this isn't all about trying one way of managing with the Leafs, and then if it works, great, and if it doesn't, when we move on to the next location, we'll try something new. Kyle Dubis is going to be known for what the style of hockey that his team plays right now, and I just don't see him deviating too much from his philosophy that has yet to bear any fruit in order to save his job in Toronto. I mean, it's a controversial way of looking at it, but I think we're going to have one more big year with these two guys at the helm. We don't think it's going to work, but if it does, they'll be proven right, and we'll have all be proven wrong that we had to endure for years and years of failure in order for these guys to finally approach the zenith. Well, I just don't think it's going to work out that way, but it remains to be seen.
Well, the other thing, and this affected everybody, but I think it affected teams like Tampa, like Toronto, more, and that's obviously the pandemic and the flattening of the salary cap and the revenue situation. I mean, the Leafs did not plan on the core four making 50% of the cap in perpetuity. They planned on the cap going up. And the cap probably would have gone up to, say, around $90 million with revenue with the new TV deal. But because now the players basically have to make up about $1 billion in revenue that's been paid to them, instead of lowering the salary cap, it's going to keep the cap flat for probably the next 4 or 5 years. So this is a dilemma. That is going to continue on. They're going to be 50%. The core four are going to be 50% of the cap for the remainder of Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, Tavares contract.
Can I add one thing, Mike, and then I'll let you continue on?
Yep.
The Stars, getting into the playoffs, the Stars were fine. Everybody was contributing around them. The Stars were fine. Marner and Matthews, all-world regular seasons. Nylander was good. I mean, Tavares was coming on. He may have been the best. If they played 82 games, he may have been the best down the stretch had they gone through the full, complete package of games. In the playoffs, the star guys with all that money tied up in that core four. Nylander was incredible. Tavares didn't get a chance to play. Right. Matthews and Marner, the biggest of the big, just couldn't score an extra 2 or 3 or 4 goals. That's it. So we talk about money being tied up and not being able to add more around the core stars. Everybody else did their job. The stars didn't come through. The two top guys didn't produce a couple more goals, and that's the reason why we're here going on like this. And the Habs still have a chance to win another Stanley Cup. That organization needs another one.
And they're not. I don't think they're going to get it. So I don't think I'm worried. But no, I mean, you have to realize, and you have to factor this into the decision-making process, that the Tavares injury in Game 1 did affect what happened in the series, simply because then Montreal's focus was shut down Mitch Marner and Matthews, put Deneau against Matthews. He's always had problems with him. Turn the tap off. And if you shut them out, there's not enough offense for them. Then they're on an equal playing field with Montreal, who is challenged offensively, and that is what worked. Now, if Tavares doesn't get hurt, do they have enough secondary offense to, even if they shut down Matthews and Marner? Probably. I mean, the 1 or 2 goals that they need in the series could have been generated by having Tavares at center with Nylander instead of Alex Kerfoot. And Alex Kerfoot had a good series. So, all that's, that is evidence, and that is probably what we'll see. Dubis and Shanahan didn't say that during the season-ending media availability, but probably when we get to free agency and we get to the time when trades are made, they're going to use Tavares being injured as part of the excuse of why they bring back the core four for another kick at the can. James Myrtle was on Steve Dangle's podcast and said that it didn't. Maybe, I don't know if it was him or if it was Steve that said it didn't make a lot of sense for the Leafs to defend the core four so vigorously if they were planning on trading with them. But I sort of disagree, because they would defend them because they want to maintain their value, and their value in terms of, sort of pumping them up and saying we're backing you, and their value potentially as in a trade, because if they do trade them, what do you want? Okay, they need to trade Mitch Marner. They need to trade William Nylander. Let's not give them full value. No, they're only going to trade those guys if they get full value. So I don't think it's completely off the page and completely impossible that they trade one of those players, like most likely Nylander, because if there's a return that really helps them in a different direction.
So trading Marner would be a hate trade. You weren't good in the playoffs, and Marner was not. I'm still confused and almost a little concerned as to what happened to that guy. Seems like the playoffs would be an opportunity for him to elevate, right? Anyway, you trade him because we're mad at you. He's done everything he needed to do in the regular season. There were nobody trolling Marner.
That's why a Marner trade's not happening.
No, but that's the thing. Nobody was trolling him, and the fact that so the thing is, again, we go back to the factions, right? It's the Marners, the Nylanders, that whole crew, right? And neither side likes each other. Nobody was trolling Marner. Nobody was upset with Marner, and there are a lot of the people who disliked Marner were fully expecting him to do well in the playoffs, and him and Matthews, they sucked, and from a public relations standpoint, Marner has the detractors, and this was an opportunity for them to jump on him, and boy, did they ever. From a production critique standpoint, Marner deserved the shit that he got. The personal stuff, I mean, I don't think anybody deserves that kind of stuff, but remember, dude on his couch with Cheetos on his chest has every right to rip on a $1 million athlete who's trying and just can't, he's gripping the stick too tight, because that's just the way it goes.
But let me just offer this. be careful if you're the Toronto fan base regarding your criticism of these players. I mean, I've heard many a person say, okay, the Leafs have disappointed, and the Leafs, it's been a disappointment for 17 years. But do you think free agents will want to continue to come to Toronto if they continue to get excoriated every year? And seeing how they treat their stars is an example of that. Okay, Marner deserved it because of the way he played. The personal attacks, that's bull crap. That the rumors about him with the power play, I seriously doubt those are true. But whatever. But Austin Matthews was at a UFC fight with Justin Bieber yesterday. Who really gives a shit? You know what I'm saying? Who really cares? Are you disappointed that Austin Matthews is not getting prepared for the Stanley Cup semifinal? Of course, everybody is. But, okay, now it's the offseason, so let him do what he wants to do as long as he comes back in October and kills it. And he did kill it this year. But that's the thing. Leaf fans have to be careful about how vociferous they are in terms of criticism of their players, because if they continue to do that and they make it miserable for these players, then down the line when they're free agents, they're going to say, see ya, Toronto.
Yeah. From what I see on social media, and let's be honest, it's the meeting place before, during, and after games.
Yes.
The Leaf fan base is probably, and you can hate me for this, probably one of the worst collectively in all sports. The reason why is because you name a fan base that hates each other as much as this fan base, and it goes to there's this philosophical divide.
Yes,
you have the old school guys. I don't care if it's age, who harken back to the '90s and but it's kind of, that's not so much let's play like that. Those teams, they think, resemble a lot of the teams that are still playing. There's a toughness, there's a more jam, there's a focus on defense, an old school way of thinking. Then there's obviously the new group of Leaf fans out there who believe that it's all finesse and it's talent, it's speed. Well, fuck no shit. That's the way the game's always been.
How
talent and speed have been the centerpiece to everything. It's all the other shit. So
how popular, Norm? How popular would the Boston Bruins, the way they're currently constructed, be if they were the Toronto Maple Leafs? They have skill and speed. They have Pasternak. They have Marchand. They have Bergeron. They have a solid goaltender. They've had a solid goaltender last for years. How popular would that team and the way that they play be in Toronto? I think they'd be massively popular. That team is sort of modeled after the 93-94 Leafs, a top line that does most of the scoring, and then a bunch of muckers and grinders and a solid defense. That's the 93-94 Leafs. That team would be extremely popular. I mean, great. They have phenomenal skill. Marner and Matthews are two of the most brilliant offensive players in the league. Matthews has got one of the best shots in the league. John Tavares is a great center. Nylander is a really talented player. It means nothing if you don't win.
Yeah, so Tavares. So again, Tavares put on the shelf. Look, Deneau and Perry, the combination that took him out. Though, whether that was premeditated. And I know it wasn't. I
refuse to believe that.
But these guys, they hit one of the Leafs' top players, just a normal hit. Then he gets nailed in the head by Corey Perry's knee. Mm-hmm. He's out.
Well,
so a team with less talent.
I think the Montreal Canadiens have
unwittingly take out, or with the intention of at least asserting some sort of physicality, take out one of the Leafs' top players.
I think Jeff Molson has hired a voodoo doctor, because that happened in the Leafs series. Muzzin goes out with a groin injury. And then in the second round, the Winnipeg Jets' best player, who's never had a reputation of flying off the handle, cartwheels Jake Evans after the empty net goal and gets suspended for 4 games. So they knocked out the best center and the second best center and probably the best two-way defenseman on the 2 teams that they face. Yeah, it's voodoo. I mean, you can't make it up. I mean, now we have to move on forward from that, and so does the management of the Leafs in terms of, okay, what do we do to make this team better? And that's where I'm like, okay, unless you're trading and trading Morgan Rielly with a year left in his contract does not make the team better. So, are you going to risk letting him walk away in free agency? Letting Zach Hyman go in free agency is not going to make the team better. So are you going to sign him? And if you sign him, how are you going to afford him? These are the questions that the fans are asking, but these are the questions that I'm sure they're asking at 40 Bay. And short of them trading one of the core 4, namely, in my opinion, Nylander, I don't know how they do that. Mm-hmm. So that's the dilemma. And we're going to find out what they're going to do fairly quickly because the expansion draft is a little over a month away, and the draft and free agency is about 6 weeks away. So, and there's only going to be a month or so between that and the beginning of training camp. Mm-hmm. So they're going to have to make a lot of decisions in a very short window of time.
Geez, Converse, what do you think the Leafs are going to do? It's not pressing that you answer definitively now because there's still so much distance between this point and the next milestone along the route. And then the next one, and then, geez, the next season's so far off. We're still dealing with what's happening at this stage. Mike, I'm betting that Dubis and Shanahan, they're going to go down with the ship. Well, and I look, would it make sense for them to trade Nylander? Never mind that his value's higher. His value was always going to be good. You know what you're getting with that guy. And if you're happy with what you're getting, he's worth every damn penny. So, but from a business perspective, it makes the most sense to trade him. And then again, you're probably going to lose a couple $100,000 or a couple $100,000, maybe even $1 million in jersey sales, because he's got a lot of fans who are probably going to move with him to the next team. But from a business perspective, it makes sense to trade him. Yet he is kind of the player of wax, the model player for the philosophy that Kyle Dubis, manages and propagates within the business. So I think they're going to go down with the ship, and I think the Leafs are going to lose some important players along the way. That's just my opinion, and I hate to be negative about it. In the end, it might actually turn out to be a benefit, because those guys know a lot more about how to manage a game than I do.
Well, this is the thing and I hope this bears out. And I have a lot of respect for guys like Chris Johnston and Elliot Friedman when it comes to being clued into what direction different franchises go. They're the insiders. They get information that I can't get or that others can't get. They seem to think that they both seem to be on the same page that there will be some sort of really consequential big addition that the Leafs will make. Now,
but how do you do it?
That's the question I have. That's not what's answered. Okay, yeah, Freddie Anderson's leaving. There's $5 million. If they trade or let Kerfoot go in expansion, that's $3.5 million. That's $8.5 million. If you leave everything at the status quo and you let Hyman walk, then you have $8.5. Then you have $10 million.
That's a big one for me. He's invaluable, and he's just that's the kind of guy you need to have on your team to be successful.
And I think that they will not. One thing you can say, Kyle Dubis appreciates the value that Zach Hyman has on this team. Kyle Dubis has known Zach Hyman from before he was even with the Maple Leafs.
Didn't he represent him?
He represented him as an advisor because he was at Michigan. He represented him as an advisor when Hyman was at Michigan because players in NCAA can't have agents. So then when Dubis joined, then he went to Sault Ste. Marie. Then Dubis joined the Leafs.
Mike, is Hyman a Dubis type of player, regardless of their history?
Yeah, I think he is. I think he is because he's a possession monster. He wins puck battles. He enables the skilled players to play with skill. That everybody criticized back in the day that Zach Hyman. Oh, what's Zach Hyman doing on the line with Matthews and Connor Brown or Matthews? He can't score goals. He scored 21 goals. His percentage of goals to games played has gone up every year. Now the thing you have to worry about him is he's 28, I think, going on 29. He's because he started late because he was in college for 4 years. He's in his prime right now, and if you're paying, and I think the way the Leafs probably get him to sign in Toronto where he wants to stay is probably giving him a 7 or 8 year deal and stretching out the AAV to keep it under $5 million. The problem is that down the line 4 or 5 years, he's probably going to be scoring 8 goals and making $4.75 million. But that you worry about that, then you front load the contract, you give him heavy signing bonus. Then he probably gets more money on that deal than he would if he gets $6 million from someplace else. So there are ways of doing it, and they have done that with other players. It's just a question of how do you do it and not hamstring yourself in other areas going down the line. And losing Morgan Rielly, Norm, is the big concern. I know he's not perfect. He's not a great point guy in the power play, but he's a pretty good number 1 defenseman. If you lose him, there's a big gap there.
So you lose him and you don't replace him. You lose Hyman, you don't replace him.
Well,
if you lose Nylander, what do you lose?
Well, you lose off.
No, I understand that, but the Leafs have enough. So again,
right.
And if you I don't want to turn this into us versus.
I think offense is easier to replace than defense, and a forward, a two-way forward like Hyman, because Hyman, Hyman kills penalties. He's on the second power play. He's a matchup guy. Morgan Rielly's playing 25 minutes a game. Those are tough things to match. Nylander's valuable, Norm, but the problem is that they have enough offense, and they have offense in their system coming up.
Yeah, no doubt. Does Hyman? He's in his prime. He started late. At the end of the day, all of these dudes want to make some serious cake, and if this is prime time for him to do just that, he's not taking a hometown discount, is he?
I think he'll take a little bit less to stay in Toronto. I know he wants to stay in Toronto. He's expressed that many a time. I think the organization is going to be honest with him. But if he gets offered, and somebody in the chat was like, well, nobody in a flat cap is offering him $6 million. There are teams out there with a lot of cap space, like Edmonton, for example. Edmonton's got a lot of cap space.
And Hyman's got to be coveted by other teams, just the way he plays.
Right. I mean, okay. Imagine Zach Hyman in Boston.
Yeah, that's exactly. I was just thinking that, and he plays that kind of game.
Can you think of a more Boston Bruin player than Zach?
He'll go there and win like 3 cups, and then we'll keep doubling down on Nylander and Dubis and these guys.
They'll trade Jake DeBrusk somewhere, clear 3 point something million dollars. They have cap room. They'll clear all that money, and they could sign Hyman for $6 million. Now, you could say they've gone down that road before. Back in the day, they signed Marty LaPointe away from Detroit, and he was that type of player. He was more of an aggressive player, but he was going down.
Yeah,
and he wasn't as good of a player there. And they spent $5 million. But Hyman's in his prime right now, so he's going to get offers. I think he would take a little bit less from the Leafs, but I think it would have
a little bit.
Yeah, I think if he is being offered, and I don't know if he's going to be offered 6, but if he's being offered 5.5 by somebody else, I would say the Leafs probably would have to come close to 5 and have to front load the contract and give him plenty of signing bonus. And I think he would take that, but I'm not his agent, and I don't know what he's being offered other places.
Yeah, there's so much to happen between now and the beginning of the next season, including figure out who's going to win the 2021 Stanley Cup. Vegas, Montreal, Islanders, Tampa. There are still Leaf fans, Mike, that look at those teams and think, you know what, we're superior.
Well, you're wrong. I mean, the only team of those four that they're superior to is the team that they lost to.
Exactly.
And Vegas, we went up before, we went through it early in the show. Vegas is big and fast and tough and has a Hall of Fame goaltender. The Islanders are defensively sound and feisty throughout. I think they don't have enough offense to beat Tampa, but they're a good team, and Tampa is the best that there is. So no, they're not as good. They're not as good as Colorado. Mm-hmm. They're not as good as Vegas. They're not as good as. I don't think they're as good as Boston. They've never proved that they're as good as Boston. Now, Boston next year with a lot of changes, they may be better than them then, but there is room for improvement. And again, I don't know how they do it. I will be a very interested observer to see what Kyle Dubas does. I'm still this is the thing. I have a lot of respect for Kyle Dubas. I think he's a smart hockey guy. I disagree with him philosophically, but I do think that this year he changed his philosophy. He augmented it to basically the realities of what the Leafs had to do. And it wasn't his moves that prevented them from winning. It was the players' performance on the ice that did. So
the top stars that he's put so much commitment into didn't come through for him, right? Nylander did the job. He's the guy who scored a whole shitload of goals in the first round, and he pulled his weight. Tavares didn't get his chance. It was Marner and Matthews who didn't come through. And we could chalk this up to a learning experience, more growing pains. And that's fine, but you need all hands on deck if you're going to do anything in the playoffs, and that includes primarily your top players who you are expecting to not only come through the regular season, but in the playoffs as well. Mike, the last few points here. Again, I just don't see Kyle Dubas doing anything insane. It'll look like a move out of desperation just to save his job. And I don't think he's at that position right now in his career. I think, he's still laying down roots in this game based on how he envisions it, his team should play and how he thinks it can win. So I just really don't see him doing anything crazy. I don't see them trading Nylander. I see them losing Hyman, potentially, someone like Rielly.
First of all, it's like, does Kyle Dubas have a future in the NHL after the Maple Leafs? I would think so, but remember, young wunderkind general manager John Ferguson Jr.
Wow.
And I'm not equating them because I think Dubas is a much smarter hockey guy than John Ferguson Jr., but he still is not a general manager in this league after failing in Toronto. And that's 13 years since he was let go as Leafs general manager. He's been an assistant throughout the league. So, in the league right now, you had the two young general managers of Dubis and John Chaika, and Dubis was not stupid enough to cheat at like the Arizona Coyotes did in terms of draft, getting information on draftees. So that may prevent John Chaika from ever getting a general manager's job in the NHL again. Dubis hasn't done that.
Yeah, he's a socially responsible. Look at Dubis. He's a great citizen, wonderful person, knows his hockey, has his way of wanting to build a champion again. But again. The rest of the league doesn't care what the Maple Leafs are doing. The rest of the league is trying to win championships the same way the Leafs are. But other teams and their way of doing things are more effective than what Kyle Dubas has been able to, conjure up in his tenure as the general manager, and obviously being supported by Brendan Shanahan and the board to this point. The rest of the league isn't going to succumb to this, effervescent style of hockey that there is a belief the Leafs are going to rule the league with. It's just, unfortunately, it's just not going to happen. I mean, there are lots of smart people across the league who have ideas of how this game should be played. And I'm, again, in a claustrophobic setting with huge dudes going at a fast pace and who are all hungry for a little black puck. The idea of just playing, a contactless Olympic hockey, really fast and fun to watch. It's going to work on some nights. It's just not going to work most nights. Last point to you.
Yeah, just to Marcus in the chat, because he said, "Welcome to the anti-Nylander convo." It's like,
Where's that?
It's early. You don't have to bring it up. But Marcus, all I'm saying is, it's not. We're not anti-Nylander, and I think both of us, since the playoffs ended, said that Nylander was the best Leaf. That doesn't mean that you don't consider trading a player who's talented when it's clearly not working. And the fact that this core group, the current core group with Tavares, has lost 3 years in the first round, and the core group without Tavares has lost 5 years in the first round. After that, you have to, again, the definition of insanity is repeating the same thing over and over. And the question I'll leave everybody with here is, if Chris Johnston and Elliot Friedman are right, and I believe they are, that the Leafs are going to make some sort of consequential addition, how do they do that money-wise if they don't trade a Nylander or a Marner?
There's hope among the fan base that to scold Mitch Marner for his shitty playoff, trade his ass away. That's the hope, that he gets traded, and Matthews and Nylander will finally come together after years of being separated because of this dastardly number 16. At the end of the day, Mike, we are we have a team that we all really care about, or a lot of us say we do, that has just not been able to get over the hump. And the guys at the top have another opportunity to make some adjustments, but they're in a real tough spot. And we can't, we can't overstate that, because it's impossible to overstate it. It's true, and it's serious. These guys have, a serious task at hand, and does defeat rest lightly on their shoulders? I don't think so. Even if there's a commitment to trying to create a style of hockey that and this commitment to it that hasn't necessarily been working. Last point to you.
Well, I think, this is just feeling here. I've heard a couple things out there that I don't know whether they're realistic or not. But if the Leafs can't re-sign Hyman, the plan B might be to re-sign Nick Foligno, because I don't know how. Everybody assumed that Foligno was going to go back to Columbus, but clearly Columbus is going in a rebuild posture. They just hired Brad Larson as their head coach, and it's, Max Domi is under the knife, and he probably won't play for about 6 months. So they're a team that's clearly on the rebuild. Seth Jones and Werenski are maybe on their way out over the next 2 years. So if they can't sign Hyman, if his price is too high, then maybe Foligno is the type of player that they bring back. But we'll see.
OG's Converse, thanks so much for being in the chat with us. You have a lot of other things you could be doing, but you spent your time with us. That means a lot to Mike and myself. Like this post on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. There's going to be a new component to the community portion of the YouTube channel. That's Ask Mike. We'll get that started here this week. When we ask you to send us your questions, just type your questions into community, and Mike will get onto the platform and
I'll try to give more than one word answers.
Yeah, type back answers. Where if we don't have at the end of the day, Mike, you'll give answers, but we don't have the answers. None of us do. So the thing is, we're in this together. You know, the misery, and then the door being cracked open where there's a little bit of a hope through it. And we just kind of keep plodding along. In the meantime, let's all root for Mike's Yankees to start scoring some more runs than they give up.
Yeah, I'll be seeing the Yankees and the Blue Jays in Buffalo, which is still odd, on Tuesday. I paid through the nose probably to watch Garrett Cole get bombed by Vladdy Jr., but hopefully not.
If you want to go to Salem Field, if you're American, or if you want to hop the border, just go to Salem Field, and I think Mike's going to be signing autographed photos of himself. Yeah. So.
Me next to Aaron Judge with my arm over his shoulder.
All right. For Mike, I'm Norm. We're out.